In Britain, no politician ever mentions God in any speech. There was one occasion when Tony Blair, Tony Blair is a very religious man, by the way, Bush's companion in arms in Iraq. Tony Blair was asked by Jeremy Paxman, who's Britain's most aggressive television interviewer, is it true, Mr. Blair, that you pray with George Bush? And Tony Blair jumped back like a startled cat and said, no, 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 no. But in fact, he almost certainly did pray with, I mean, he is a praying man, but he keeps quiet about it. As his right-hand spin doctor, Campbell, said, we don't do God. Well, American politicians do God in a big way because they think they have to in order to get elected, and the poll that you've quoted suggests that that's true. Maybe it's an exaggeration. I think Christopher Hitchens is of the view that it's an exaggeration. Maybe it's not. But either way, it's up to, not me because I'm not an American citizen, it's up to you to change all that. The actual numerical number of atheists, agnostics, secularists in this country is very high. It's higher than religious minorities who have enormous political power by the force of their lobbying. I think I'm right in saying that the atheist, secularist, agnostic group is larger than any other single religious group. I think there may be one exception. Yet they are totally without influence because they are almost completely not involved in lobbying as a group. In a way, that's a compliment. I mean, it's... Organising atheists has been compared, not by me, to herding cats. It is a kind of compliment, but it probably would be of political advantage if something equivalent to professional lobbyists got going. And I'm happy to say that that is now happening, and that a group in America has got together the money to pay a professional Washington lobbyist, and she's doing extremely well. And that sort of thing ought to increase. And let's hope that it does, and let's hope that everybody here will help to make that happen.
Thank you.
Hello, Professor Dawkins. I'm definitely a fan, but I'm having trouble reconciling one thing. You say that religious beliefs are basically preferences like pizza or any kind of color or something. However, you yourself preach that the faith in non-belief is an objective truth. How can objective truths in general exist in the realm of subjective belief?
Objective truth exists in the real world. What science is about is finding out what is true in the real world. For example, plate tectonics, the movement of continents, is true. It is supported by massive amounts of evidence. It doesn't mean that scientific beliefs are always true for all time, because sometimes new evidence comes in to change people's beliefs. But there always is a standard, which is evidence. And that standard of evidence is objective, it's universal, it applies wherever you're born, wherever you live. An Indian scientist, a Japanese scientist, an American scientist, looking at the same data, will come to the same conclusion. The same, of course, is not true of religious belief. The questioner asks, how can there be an objective truth in a world of subjectivity? Well, genuinely subjective phenomena like love of certain kinds of music or love of another person, there are truths about that which are not amenable to immediate scientific investigation. But that doesn't mean that there's something other than scientific events, scientifically investigable events going on in the mind of a person who loves a kind of poetry, loves a kind of music, or loves another person. You cannot necessarily prove that your wife loves you by scientific means, but you can observe all sorts of little catches in the voice, little looks in the eye, years of experience, years of exposure, and that is evidence, that's genuine, objective, real-world evidence of the same kind as scientific evidence is, even though it may not be systematic or experimental in the way that scientific evidence ideally is.
Yeah, Francis Collins was here last month in the same room and spoke to an audience which is just as big. And he said something about your book that I wrote down and I want you to respond to. He says, Dawkins in this book argues that religion is the greatest source of evil, and basically at one point argues that parents who raise their children in a religious tradition are committing child abuse and should be prosecuted for it. That's what he said.
I think he might be prosecuted for libel, actually. I have never said that parents who bring up their children religious should be prosecuted for child abuse. I'm trying to raise consciousness. I'm not trying to change the law. I'm trying to say, when you hear a child labeled as a Christian child, simply because its parents are Christian, then that is child abuse. But I'm not saying that, as I actually have frequently been accused of saying, that children should be seized by the state from religious homes and brought up in state-run communal child farms. So, no, I mean, that is a travesty, and one that I should have thought Francis Collins would have risen above.
Thank you.
Thank you.